Good evening and welcome to Connecticut Politics Live. I'm Joe McGuire along with Jimmy J. We've got all the latest headlines affecting Connecticut. And our guest tonight at 5:30 is Connecticut news junkie, op-ed writer Barth Keck, who's in his 31st year as an English teacher, his 16th year as an assistant football coach at Haddam Killingworth High School, where he teaches courses in journalism, media literacy, and AP English language and composition. You could follow Barth on Twitter at KeckB33. Guys, a heck of a follow on Twitter for sure. We've got some great questions for him tonight. He's written some pretty great articles, including the teacher shortage here in Connecticut, him being a teacher. And also, we'll take stock of what happened with the Republican Party last month. Barth's got some thoughts on it that I agree with and you don't. So that will be very interesting, Jimmy.
I do and I don't, but.
All right.
Yeah.
Before we do get started with the headlines, the Foster Foundation and Claus Larson Roofing are teaming up to help the Covenant Soup Kitchen with an emergency concert. It is coming up on Sunday, December 18th. David Foster and the Shabu All-Stars will be performing a live show at the Claus Larson Production Theater on Northridge Drive in North Windham. The Covenant Soup Kitchen donations and funds are significantly lower than they were last year, and it's because they've served up nearly 2 million meals. More individuals and families are asking for help, and as the numbers grow large, while the supply chain issues and inflation have seriously cut into food stocks, outreach is underway to foundations and corporations who always do their part. But most of the Covenant Soup Kitchen budget is funded by individual donations. So this concert, $20 per ticket. It's going to be a heck of a fun night. Go to eventbrite.com. You could search for the Shabu All-Stars, the Foster Foundation, and Claus Larson Roofing. Again, teaming up to help Covenant Soup Kitchen with this emergency funding concert. Sunday, December 18th. You'll also find the information across the bottom of the screen if you are interested. Love to see you there coming up again Sunday, the 18th.
Should be a good time for a great cause, Joe.
Absolutely it is.
God, not to go from a great subject and a happy subject to this subject, but we have a responsibility. It's been 10 years since the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School. The students who would have been juniors in high school were taken way too soon. On December 14th, 2012, 20 students and 6 educators were slain, and since then, families have had to learn to live without their loved ones for the past 10 years. Families have not stopped fighting against gun violence. Relatives of victims keep hope for a better future. Sandy Hook Promise is a nonprofit organization that that was created after the mass shooting by relatives of the victims. The organization works to fight against gun violence and saves lives. Founders Mark Barden and Nicole Hockley, who lost their son in the shooting, remain activists. The conversation around gun control on the state and national level continues. Connecticut's Governor Lamont said in a statement Monday, more action needs to be taken to prevent mass shootings. He said plans to introduce new gun measures. So first off, today is the 10th anniversary. So obviously we have to take a moment and recognize that, and all the families and of the victims. It's a horrible. All politics aside here, I know it's CT politics, but all politics aside, there is no politics when it comes to 20 slain children. There's no politics when it comes to that, in my opinion.
Well, you and I have talked about this quite a bit. Obviously, look, we got to protect our kids, and whatever legislation is enacted in the future, again, it's got to make sense, and it actually has to prevent these things from happening, whatever that might be. I think for some people, the easy solution, just ban all the guns. If that were tried and true and it worked, I don't think anybody would disagree with it. I think unfortunately this situation is so much more nuanced than that. And so again, passing laws for the sake of passing laws that won't protect our kids makes things political, and it really doesn't kind of push the ball forward at all. And I think that's what we need to do, especially on a day like today. A terrible day. Everybody remembers where they were on
Yeah.
that. I was unfortunately, as the morning guy at a radio station, I would have immediately been on the air with the round the clock coverage. I was going into a dentist appointment, and I was in there for about an hour and a half. And by the time I got out and realized what was going on, I was 40 minutes away from the radio station, and they were already like an hour and a half into live coverage. And I was like, should I come in there? And they were like, you're going to have a lot to deal with starting tomorrow morning. And, again, I remember bringing my kids to school that Monday, Jimmy, and seeing police out front and just tears in my eyes and thinking, it's not supposed to be like this for kids. Really isn't.
Yeah, absolutely not. I just get angry. I really, really do. I get more mad than anything. I'll be honest.
Yeah, well, it's that kind of stuff. By the way, and this was pretty great, and I'll explain why in a minute, but on this 10th anniversary of the shooting at Sandy Hook, Jenny Hubbard, the mother of Catherine Hubbard, helped break ground today on the first building of the Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary in Newtown. The Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary carries the legacy of this amazing 6-year-old girl who loved animals. The sanctuary is where animals are cared for, nature is celebrated, and where kindness lives. I did a lot of work with Matt and Jenny Hubbard in the aftermath of this, hosting golf tournaments to raise funds in hopes that they'd eventually be able to open up this sanctuary. And the idea that it's the first building open today on this 10th anniversary just weighs so heavy on my heart. I said this yesterday on the show, and I was referring specifically to Jenny and Matt, how they were able to turn this tragedy into a positive. You mentioned being angry, Jimmy. I don't know if I'd be able to power myself through this. And I think it just goes to show what amazing people these families are to invest their time and efforts to honor these kids. It's truly incredible. Now, in June, the House and Senate voted to pass the Safer Communities Act, which addresses gun violence nationwide. That followed 2 mass shootings, one of which was also at an elementary school, the Uvalde mass shooting in Texas, and the mass shooting at the grocery store in Buffalo. Now, this past November, a memorial was built to honor the victims near the new elementary school where the old one was torn down after the massacre.
Great story for including you, Joe. Yeah. Absolutely. Congratulations on that. Do you know what was funny? Again, not funny, but this thing went global, right? The news of Sandy Hook went global. The Queen of England gave a statement. I mean, it was global, and people don't realize what a small town and small community Newtown really is, where there's such a vast, there's more land that, there's a lot of land on it where you can have this animal sanctuary. I think when people hear of Sandy Hook or Newtown, especially if you're not obviously from here, you think of like, this could happen in these big cities, and you hear these happening in these large metropolitan areas. You don't think of it happening in such a small community like Newtown really is. Yeah. And I think people would actually be shocked to find that out. So.
I'm going to give you one more side note to my story, by the way, and hopefully I won't cry. I'll never forget the first time I met Matt Hubbard. And he thanked me. We'd sold out both golf courses at Lyman Orchards. And a buddy of mine worked for Matt, and that's how I got involved, was through my buddy. I had found out the day before that my daughter, who turns 10 on Christmas Day, was autistic. And I got there, I saw my buddy, and I was still kind of beside myself at that bad news. And my buddy was like, dude, kids nowadays with autism, like, I'm sure she's going to, and as it turns out, you mentioned report cards earlier, just before we went live. My daughter had a really great report card this term. And I remember when Matt asked me to meet Jenny, I was still kind of feeling sorry for myself and my family in the situation we were in.
Mm,
And that woman thanked me for being there. And at that point, it occurred to me like, listen, if my daughter's autistic and it's the worst kind of autism, which of course it isn't, she's alive.
perspective.
Perspective, you know?
Absolutely. People need,
Uh,
we'll get
but
on this later, but
I'll tell
people
you what,
actually need to get some perspective.
Jimmy, I met Jenny. She said thank you for, and I just lost my mind, crying my eyes out. But you're right, it really is about perspective, and I think especially now on the 10th anniversary, like you can really look back and
Yeah.
appreciate, just exactly what that means.
Joe, I was telling you it went global, right? It went Hollywood, right? Grammy Award-winning activist and artist Sheryl Crow dropped a new live track, I Shall Believe, to honor the tragedy of Sandy Hook Elementary School. Her performance of the track, which was recorded at a benefit in Nashville last month, benefited the Sandy Hook Promise organization, the one we were just talking about. Crow's live gig will be a part of a series of docu-concerts in the forthcoming 2023 film, A Father's Promise. A film tells the story of co-CEO of SHP, Mark Barden, who survived the unthinkable and is becoming a force of change. An additional fundraiser has been implemented with a Promise Band led by Barden, a band leader, Jimmy, I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Vivino, to raise funds for the SHP. The social giving app, Cause, offered to match the first $50,000 in donations.
I am a huge fan of Sheryl Crow, by the way. I think she's one of my all-time favorite rockers, her and the late now Tom Petty. I used to love when they would perform, I've just always been a fan. I'm glad that she got involved. I saw that earlier today, and I thought, you know what?
That was great.
She's a good person, and I have not had a chance to hear that song yet. I don't know if I'll be able to keep it all together listening to it today, but I'm certainly going to give it a shot.
And a big thank you to that social giving app, Cause, for matching 50 grand. That's a large number.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
good.
Hey,
Thank you
every
very
little
much.
bit helps, right?
Yeah.
Jimmy, meanwhile, with an active and early flu season here in Connecticut and across the country, ERs are bustling and hospitals have been fairly full depending on the day. This is probably one of our most robust seasons of influenza since probably the 2010-2011 season, said Dr. Ulysses Wu, the Hartford Healthcare's chief epidemiologist. Wu said normal flu season peaks in mid-February. Not this year, though. He says we're probably going to see it peak in late January, but again, these are just predictions. Wu advises people to get the flu shot, which I did yesterday. Totally worth it. Not always a flu shot guy, but when it comes early and bad like this, I'm not taking any chances. Dr. Wu said it's never too late. He wants people to know it does not give you the flu. It is not a shot with the flu inside of it. He also said COVID-19 cases have been on the rise since Thanksgiving. He's not calling it a spike like in previous years and expects to see COVID-19 cases peaking now through the Christmas and New Year holidays. Some positive news, though. Hospitalizations at Hartford Hospital have been down slightly over the past few days. The facility is only around 77% capacity.
Which, 77% doesn't sound all that great, but it's better than the 98% it was. A couple weeks ago, a few days ago, actually. And I believe that it was the majority of it was pediatrics, if I'm not misunderstanding.
Yeah, that RSV boy has also
kids.
been really adding to, like you said, to capacity at the hospital. It's been like that at Yale as well. So, again, it's the time of the year where we all want to be together and we want to spend time with relatives and loved ones. And, again, if you're going to be around people that are vulnerable, probably do the right thing. If at least they're not, make sure you are. And if you are, and just do the thing that's sensible. I'm not trying to tell anybody. I know these things have become sort of political these days, but I got my shot yesterday, my flu shot. I don't always get a flu shot, but the way things have been going the last couple of years, I figure better safe than sorry.
Why
Not
not?
worth it.
Hey, Joe, I have a quick question before I go on.
Yeah.
When was the last time you and I hosted or anchored together? Was it Monday?
Yes.
Okay. Hold that thought for me real quick. All right. Because pedestrian deaths are on the rise. And in Connecticut, the number of fatalities leaves the state as one of the deadliest across the country.
Wow.
According to a new study conducted by car insurance app Jerry, Connecticut has the 7th highest number of pedestrian deaths, falling only behind Kansas, New Hampshire, Vermont, Mississippi, and Tennessee. Jerry said aggressive and distracted driving may be to blame, leaving vulnerable people on the road at risk. From 2011 to 2020, 26% of pedestrian deaths occurred at intersections, 91% of the deaths on roadways. This means that people were more prone to be struck if they were crossing a road or walking alongside of a road with no sidewalk. Data from over 10 years of crashes show that the number of pedestrians killed by drivers have jumped 65%,
Wow.
totaling 7,342 in 2021. The study also found that nearly 1 in 5 traffic fatalities involved a person on foot last year, and 4 of every 5 pedestrian deaths occurred in an urban area. Passenger cars killed more pedestrians every year than SUVs. Just as a side note from Jerry. And nearly a third, only a third, which I would have thought would have been a little higher, pedestrians killed in 2020 had a BAC, blood alcohol content, of 0.08. So only less than a third of them were drunk. So the reason why I brought up last week is because I thought we said that Connecticut is one of the safest driving states in the country, except if you're a pedestrian.
Yeah, so
they
I
don't
guess they're
count.
talking
They
about
don't count hitting people in crosswalks as a bad mark on the safe driving checklist, or what?
It's interesting. I again, that was a different company that we were talking about on Monday, and yeah, clearly these guys have different measures
They have not talked to each other.
What safety means. Yeah, clearly not. And listen, I feel like, again, having worked in radio and television for some 25 years, you can look at the demographic breakdown and you're going to find somewhere where you're killing it. And you could say you're the number one radio or TV station. And that would technically be true. So not unlike politics where, again, most of the time people are saying stuff, it's kind of true, like, well, I guess if, again, right, we talk about the economy and it's like, well, there's certain measurements of the economy right now where it's looking great. If you're talking about with the inflation and how people are able to handle grocery shopping and gas, not good, right? But again, there's certain indicators that you could point out. We're like, well, this is going great. This is going great. And it's like, well, I guess on paper, yes. But what about all these other factors? And again, it's all about in how you're measuring these things. But yeah, that's a very good point. Like you said, we're super safe unless you're outside the vehicle, and then it's chaos.
Walking,
yeah. Yeah. Good point there. Yeah. Again, right. That's the key word tonight. Perspective. Yeah. Jimmy, meanwhile, Wreaths Across America made its way across Connecticut. Its escort to Arlington is the longest veteran parade in the country. A convoy of tractor trailers and other vehicles carrying more than 300,000 wreaths from Maine to Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. The convoy stopped at New Britain High School. It also stopped at Western Connecticut State University in Danbury. Each December, the National Wreaths Across America Day, where the mission is to remember, honor, and teach, is carried out by coordinating wreath-laying ceremonies at Arlington National Cemetery, as well as the more than 3,400 additional locations in all 50 states by sea and abroad.
As a Marine, I've been to Arlington National Cemetery, and I can tell you it's impressive, right? I don't know if that's the best term for it, but it is. It's an impressive sight to see. It's very humbling. That's maybe a better word for it. Mm-hmm. In this traveling convoy of wreaths, equally as impressive. Gotta tell you. I can't wait to go down. I mean, New Britain, you said?
Yep.
Yeah. I live extremely close. I'm going
You
to
know,
be right there. Can't
I'll
wait.
tell you, I don't care who you are or what your politics are. I think when it comes to honoring people who have given their lives for this country, I think whatever we can do to honor those people, I think most people are like yes to that. And having learned a little bit more about this, the Wreaths Across America today, absolutely beautiful. Obviously, this time of the year, again, we're talking about loss and reflecting on family and stuff. An absolutely beautiful occasion this was.
No, it's great. I hope everybody can get out there and take a look and support this. So I'm kind of conflicted about this one, Arjo, because at least a half a dozen states have recently enacted bans on the use of TikTok by state employees, and now some federal lawmakers are hoping to ban it nationwide. TikTok, which has exploded in popularity in recent years, is owned by ByteDance or ByteDance, I can't remember, a Chinese company that moved its headquarters to Singapore in 2020. The platform allows users to scroll through endless videos similar to Vine, a platform launched by Twitter in 2013 that allows users to scroll through a seemingly endless supply of 6-second long videos. TikTok has also been targeted by Republicans who say the Chinese government could access its user data like browser history and location. U.S. Armed Forces have even prohibited the app on military devices. Last month, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem enacted a ban on TikTok across all state government-issued devices, citing its ties to China. On Thursday, after the bans were announced, TikTok shared it would be making improvements how we organize internally and to further promote a safe and secure platform for our community. This includes creating a team to work on compliance safety strategies and moderation for content involving U.S. users' private data. So here's my confliction. TikTok is funny. TikTok is awful. TikTok will rot your brain. TikTok is entertaining.
I find, I recently was doing some research on this, and you wouldn't recognize TikTok if you lived in China.
Oh,
if you use that app in
podcast.
China, yes, we have. They're showing children working hard, and they show scientific achievements and people doing well at math. That's what Chinese TikTok is.
And they're only the algorithm 30 minutes a day.
Yeah,
by the way.
And the algorithm we get is people pulling idiotic pranks and eating Tide Pods and other nonsense. And so, I'm not a big fan of banning anything, but I don't feel like this particular, I just got on TikTok like a week or two ago. While I was in the hospital, I was so bored and I ended up signing up for it, and I absolutely regret it. Yeah, it's beyond idiotic. It really is. Like there's nothing useful comes out of TikTok in any way, shape, or form. So I'm fine with us if they decide to ban it.
Don't ban it. Just give us the same content as China. Why don't we show content?
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, kids being successful and doing math and learning. Yeah, because I'll tell you what, it seems to me about 80% of what's on TikTok are horribly staged pranks.
Oh my God, they're just getting awful now, and everybody's just trying to get that little bit of clout.
I find nothing less funny than fake pranks.
No, that's annoying. It's obnoxious and it makes me angry.
I 100% agree with you.
100%.
Meanwhile, the wife of journalist Grant Wahl, who died while covering the World Cup in Qatar on Saturday, said her husband died from an undetected aortic aneurysm. Selene Gaudner said in a Substack post today that the New York City Medical Examiner's Office conducted an autopsy on Wahl and found that he died of the rupture of a slow-growing aortic aneurysm, which is a bulge that occurs on the aorta. Gaudner said the chest pressure that Wahl experienced shortly before his death may have been an initial symptom. Wahl was covering a match between the Netherlands and Argentina when he fell ill and could not be revived. He visited a hospital on the Monday prior to his death, but was told he likely had bronchitis and was prescribed antibiotics and cough syrup. He's well known for his time working for Sports Illustrated. He had earlier tweeted that he'd been detained and denied entry to the World Cup over his wearing of a rainbow soccer ball T-shirt to support LGBTQ members. And again, there was a lot of allegations that perhaps something had happened, but this does look like, unfortunately, it was just a terrible tragedy that Grant Wahl passed away.
Very, very tragic for him dying. And, that's going to be awful. You're just up there, you're reporting, and that's it.
Just like that. Yeah. Tragic.
Awful. It's so bad, Joe. I find it so saddening that I'm not even going to comment on the shirt. And it's not even a political thing, but again, I believe we were talking about Brittany Griner, and what these countries are. You know who these people are. Like, what did you expect?
Well, right, there's no reason why an international competition of any sort should be held at a place like Qatar at all.
Agreed.
And 100%. Most everybody who I didn't watch a lot of the World Cup, but most of the people who I heard at some point, commentator or another, all pointed out the fact that it's a slap in the face of international human rights that place was even was the host site. It just absolutely ludicrous this day and age. But it's about money, unfortunately, and the guy with the most money wins.
So, hey, Joe, you want to hear about the weather a little bit?
Tell me.
So tonight's not going to be that bad, right? It's going to be a little scattered cloud, lows, mid-20s tonight. It's a little chilly. But, tomorrow there's going to be more clouds, mostly dry in the morning. However, come dinner time, it's starting to get a little wet, right? A little wet, some rain coming down, right? They're going to be in the high in the upper 30s to low 40s that day. On Friday, this is when it's going to be, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to watch for a nor'easter. Snow likely in the northwestern hills and the higher elevations. So we might get rain down here in the lower valleys for the rest of the state But we're going to see. I was looking I was watching the news earlier, and the European model has the upper northwest hills getting crushed, where the American model actually had all of Connecticut getting crushed. So depending on that storm in the Midwest right now is going to determine. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed that it stays in the northwest hills. Saturday, there's going to be a mix of sun and clouds, high in the low 40s. Sunday, mostly sunny with highs in the mid to upper 30s. But that weekend will be dry.
We need some dry weather this weekend for sure.
Yeah.
All right. We are going to take a quick break here on Connecticut Politics Live. When we come back, our guest this evening, Connecticut news junkie, op-ed writer, Barth Keck.
CT Politics TV and the Connecticut Taxpayers Union present On Affordable America with Daniel Kent Newmeyer, Joe Patrina's band Little House, focusing on Connecticut.
Now get yourself ready, go cat go. Ooh, yeah.
Entertaining and taking an educational look at nonpartisan issues of affordable living in America.
Born in a land where we wave 'em high.
All points of view are welcome.
And we got blue angels climbing in the sky. I'm the luckiest guy in America. I'm the luckiest man born in America.
Join the Connecticut Taxpayers Union right now at ctpolitics.tv.
Born in America.
Welcome back to Connecticut Politics Live. Our guest this evening is Connecticut news junkie, op-ed writer Barth Keck, who's in his 31st year as an English teacher, his 16th year, by the way, as an assistant football coach at Haddam Killingworth High School, where he teaches courses in journalism, media literacy, and AP English language and composition. You got to follow this guy on Twitter at KeckB33. He's a heck of a follow. Barth, thank you for joining us here. I have you on the radio. I've had you on the radio before. Always enjoy talking to you. So thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we're going to talk about your latest article. You wrote a really great op-ed about the teacher shortage here in Connecticut. But before we get there, I do want to just go back in time a couple of weeks where the election here in Connecticut, and we've talked a lot about this on this program, somehow this state, and I didn't think it was possible, got bluer. There are places in Connecticut that have never been blue before that also went blue. And my friend Jimmy here is a conservative, and he's a tried and true Republican. He seems to be one of those people, and I love Jimmy to death, but I don't think these guys understand exactly what happened on November 8th here in Connecticut, in that despite high inflation, despite high gas prices, despite, a perception of crime being rampant and the immigration problem along the Mexican border being out of control, that for the most part, the Republicans had a terrible night, and in Connecticut had clearly an awful night. Your thoughts?
You want my thoughts?
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't want you to hammer on me here. That's all he wants you to do.
I'm baiting you a little bit. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I
This is
guess
great.
you are. No, well, I did write about it. And I think the way that I approached it was, I remember during the McCarthy Army hearings when he was essentially asked, have you sense of decency? And, I kind of thought of, the idea that the way that the Republican candidate, the major Republican candidates, the national Republican candidates in Connecticut approached their campaigns was, I thought, lacking common sense. So it kind of like struck me as, where have you no sense of common sense is how I framed it.
Mhm.
Only because, I think Connecticut is traditionally, historically moderate when it comes to Republicans. We have that history of bipartisanship, and Lo Weicker, of course, is maybe the one that comes to mind when it comes to that idea. But that's another issue altogether. But I thought that the way that some of the candidates approached like cultural wars, is that really something that's going to play in Connecticut? And yeah, I mean, it does in certain towns here and there. And as a teacher, I hear about it, and but I just didn't think that was going to resonate with Connecticut residents. So I didn't think that was a common sense approach to campaigning. And I guess that essentially the election showed that. It showed that, maybe common sense was that Connecticut is one of the last bastions of common sense in America, maybe.
No, not at all. We just read 2 articles this week about how it doesn't make any sense here, Barth. But
I think we have an opportunity, though. I think that there are problems that need to be addressed. Obviously, you have the inflation, and we have issues that if we looked at the issues rather than the culture wars, maybe we could address them. Maybe we could come up with some bipartisan solutions. That's kind of where I'm coming from, is that the Connecticut Republican Party looked like they were taking a cue from the National Republican Party and trying to steer Connecticut into the direction of the culture wars, which obviously it didn't play. I mean, let's look at the real issues and solve them, and see if we can get together and solve them. That's pretty much where I'm coming from.
Yeah, well, again, I kept saying, I mean, if you want to win this election, I would focus on inflation and high prices. And I would have talked about, as a Republican, what my plan would have been to get those prices down. Connecticut historically is a very unaffordable state. We have high taxes. Those are the things they should have been focused on. And instead, you heard things like critical race theory, which, Barth, I think you can speak on as a teacher, isn't being taught in the schools here. You mentioned the culture war, this idea, and I talked to Bob Stefanowski about why he was going after transgender kids. There was a lawsuit in Connecticut that got thrown out of court because they couldn't actually find any transgender athletes who were actually competing in Connecticut to be the defendants in the case. So it to me, it was a philosophy and a strategy that literally went nowhere. And again, they sort of shot themselves in the foot. Not that I think they had much of a chance, but I think you look at Bob Stefanowski, a guy who was running for governor for the last 4 years, was lost by 3.5 in 2018. And somehow managed to get himself completely blown out in this second go around. Again, I think that just speaks to most people were like, this is ridiculous.
So I would like to just interject, if I may, here, because I understand, and I read your article, and it's a really well-written article, by that. I actually enjoyed reading it, and I agree with a lot of it. I really, really do, which is, by the way, I'm not the bad Trump or conservative. All right, don't let Joe scare
They all
you.
say.
All right, don't let Joe scare you. I am going to talk about Trump a little bit in a positive way, but I'm not a Trumper, right? So, yes, I agree that they tried to bring the national topics in here to the state of Connecticut. Do I think that was a bad idea? Maybe. I'm going to say maybe, only because if you look at the national stage, Trump has a winning record. Trump is in first place in the AFC South and in the NFC South. He went 9-6 on the Senate stage. That's a good record in those football divisions, right? So I'm not saying it was a good idea. And I probably, if I was running, wouldn't have done that. But hitching your wagon to a winning team isn't the worst idea. And I wouldn't say it went against common sense. Because if you see somebody winning, you want to win too. I mean, that to me is the definition of common sense, actually. Were they mistaken? Sure. Obviously proven on November 8th. Right?
Well, I think what's going to happen now is, now that we've seen the national election and a lot of those Trump candidates, the majority of them lost, the national ones, will the Connecticut, at least the Connecticut GOP, realize that, okay, well, we tried to hitch our wagon to a winner. That didn't work. Let's see where we're going now. And, and Trump, let's face it, I mean, nationally, he has lost a lot of that gleam that he had. And, that you got DeSantis coming out of Florida, and, maybe he's going to be the heir apparent. Who knows? It's way too early to tell that. But
when I mentioned Trump, I excluded the last 2 weeks, by the way.
Okay, well, right. So
yeah, the suspending of I would not bring up the suspending of the Constitution either. Yeah, that doesn't
those
help.
kind of things I excluded.
Yeah, no, that's so. What's going to happen from here? I think that'll be the interesting thing. Will the GOP, particularly the Connecticut GOP, come up with a different kind of strategy? And whether you want to call it common sense or whether you want to call it winning because these are the issues that matter, that I think that maybe it's time to take that turn. But I'm not a political strategist.
At all. I'm not disagreeing at all. And you also mentioned identity politics, or is that what you called it? I believe, because I'm a producer of a radio show. Joe is on the personality on a radio show. We've both had Bob Stefanowski on the phone a million times. We've both had him in our studios hundreds of times. And he's literally come out and told us his plan. Both of us on air to everybody. He was out there saying, this is how I'm going to fix it. This is how I'm going to fix it. But all I heard from Ned Lamont was, Bob's going to steal your abortion rights. That's all I heard. That was it. And again, in our studios saying, no, not 100%, not going to take that away. It's codified in the law. Can't take it away. Not going to take it away. So when it came to the national identity politics here in the state of Connecticut, man, was it effective, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's, you almost feel bad for these guys that, this is the same group of people who somehow thought that Joe Biden won the last election from his basement, because that's what they heard and that's what they believed. Obviously, this guy went across the country and the things he said resonated with people. That's how he won that election by 7 million. So again, I think that sometimes these guys hear things and they really start to believe some of the nonsense. I've been trying to get Ben Proto on here for a couple of weeks. I would love to talk to Ben Proto and tell him I think you need a rebrand. And I think what Barth is saying, that honestly, I think you need to like Barth said, get down to common sense and talk about actual issues. Stop trying to wade into the Donald Trump culture war, because you're never going to win that here. Never going to
I'm
win it.
actually saying stay the hell away from it. All I'm doing is reading an article here and commenting on an article.
But
right?
these guys are doubling down on it.
All I'm saying, sure, you can double down on it. You can be an idiot. Go right ahead, right? It didn't work in November. It's probably not going to work in 2 more years. It definitely won't work in 4, right? But if we're going to call a spade, I mean, I gotta point these things out to kind of be fair here, right? You were calling. I don't understand. Like, the Democrat Party always gets a pass on any kind of politics they want to play. Yeah, we always call out the Republicans. Is it because they lost? Maybe. Maybe. But I'm just trying to be a straight shooter here, right? Because I didn't understand how identity politics came into this election on the Republican side more so than the Democrat side, according to your article. Do you know what I'm saying? It was confused by that. Because I watched the news. I produced some of the news.
Well, I don't know that I necessarily emphasized identity politics that much in the article. I guess the point that I'd like to make is that I don't think that the identity politics issue is that great of an issue here in Connecticut, as compared to other states, but also compared to other issues that are more important to both parties and independents. I mean, let's not forget the independents. They're the largest party in Connecticut, right?
Yeah, so, they didn't show up at all.
Yeah. So you make a good point. And I know that I think I agree with you that the Democrats probably do get a pass, maybe partially because they're the party in power, right? And so, it's the party that's the underdog that we're really going to focus on. And I might be guilty of that myself when I write. So, it's a fair point.
I really
very
like
kind of you to concede a point to Jimmy here. Let's talk about that's hilarious. Let's talk about the teacher shortage. Again, you're in your 31st year teaching.
32nd.
32nd.
Yeah,
there you go.
That bio line's a little. I just finished my 18th year of football and I'm in my 32nd year of teaching. So
how'd you guys do this year, by the way?
Oh man, you had to bring that up. We finished 6-4, which was a marked improvement from 2-8 last year. Ooh. We missed the playoffs by 1 PowerPoint. They changed the structure this year, they added a class. We're class S. We're small. The top 8 teams instead of the top 4 went this year. We finished number 9, and we were number 8, sitting at number 8 until the last game, which we lost, and then North Branford hopped over us, and we had actually beaten North Branford in the regular season, but PowerPoints pushed them ahead of us. And
that's ridiculous.
Long story short, we missed the play. You can do an entire show on the CIAC playoff system in football. They've been done. I mean, those are the Game Time Connecticut guys over at Hearst Media.
We're definitely going to have to do a whole show based on that.
Participate in that.
Yeah, somebody need to explain that to me.
I'll tell you, this is I'm from Meriden. I went to Platt.
Oh.
And
I had a great year. Platt had a great year too.
Yeah, right. So the whole town of Meriden and some of my former teammates are now coaches at Maloney, and a lot of my friends who I went to Platt with have kids who go to Maloney, and all of Meriden was trying to rally or like, go Maloney. And I thought to myself, that is my arch rival. There is never a scenario. I don't care. We'll never root for Maloney. I was kind of glad they lost in the state championship.
Well, I to be honest, Valley Regional is our Thanksgiving opponent. They are our traditional rival. We lost to them on Thanksgiving. They knocked us out of the playoffs. They went all the way to the championship game of Class SS, and unfortunately, they ran into like a steamroller Barlow team who just 61-6 was the final. I can't say, Schadenfreude is a strong emotion, but I can't say that it was necessary. I don't know. I feel bad for them because they represent the Pequot Conference, our small school conference. But at the same time, I know what you're talking about. I know that feeling,
Yeah.
So, nonetheless.
You want to pretend to care for the kids, but
sure.
You just can't do it.
Well, and that's the beauty of football, though. That's the beauty of high school football, that you get into these, and they're friendly rivalries, hopefully, right? It's not the serious issues that we're talking about a couple minutes ago. But
absolutely. All right, but let's talk about this teaching shortage. It is very real, and as you say in the article, very troubling for the state of Connecticut. It seems like a lot of people who are in this industry want to get out. I can't help, and there was actually a cartoon associated with the article through Connecticut News Junkie. talking about CRT, not critical race theory, but if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, retaining teachers. That was the RT part of it. It's that that's the most serious issue that's facing Connecticut is retaining teachers. And I would just add, and I do point this out somewhat in my article, it's also attracting high school kids and college kids to the career, because the enrollment in education programs at the post-secondary level have been down even since before the pandemic. So the issue is, what are we going to do? Teachers aren't coming into teachers are going to be leaving more so than normal. And teachers are also not coming into the system to replace them. And I just read, one of the articles that I found said that fully half of the schools in America right now have at least one vacancy that they can't fill. Maybe that doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean, if you're a parent of a kid and you have a long-term sub who's not certified in that topic and your kid's in that class, that's a problem. And it's not going to get better, at least not in the near future. So that's where we're at right now.
So I was reading the article, which again, great article. I really enjoy reading your articles. I got to do it more often, to be honest with you.
Well, I do them every 2 weeks. I'm on a 2-week plan.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, now I know. 98% of the teachers surveyed said they were stressed or burned out, I believe it said in that article.
That was the CEA, Connecticut Education Association, said 98% actually said burnout and stress was their number one issue right now.
Wow, that's staggering. I think that beats the ATC community, the air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective, Joe.
I think what we're seeing now, it's the perfect storm of issues facing teachers, coming out of COVID, obviously. You were talking about TikTok before I came on the air, and social media, and especially at the middle school and the high school level, you have kids who grow up on smartphones and, attention deficit problems that, I'm seeing, and not only me, but all kinds of teachers are seeing in the classroom. You have that issue. You have the political issues, the CRTs, and the, parental choice. And those are seeing their way into the classroom. And then there's the pressure to make sure that our school is achieving. And how do we do that is we measure the standardized test scores. And all of these things are congealing at once to create, 32 years, it is indeed the most pressure that I felt in my job. It's just the nature of the job right now. The circumstances are all coming together at once.
So I actually wanted to bring identity politics up earlier, just to bring it up again and kind of make it a tiny bit succinct, because I don't know any teachers. I really don't. I don't know any, and I don't talk to a lot of them. So I'm actually going to ask you this in earnest. Do you think that do you think that teachers are receiving outside pressure from this, I'm going to call it ludicrous identity politics? Do you think that, because according to Joe, and I believe you guys, that CRT, critical race theory is not, a big thing here in the state of Connecticut, but is the political pressure from these people, I guess, parents that don't know any better, get into these teachers?
Well, I don't personally, and in my school, I don't feel pressure to teach it other than to just accept everybody. And when we talk identity politics, it's not just, LGBTQ. We're talking,
right,
male, female. We're talking young, old. We're talking ethnicity. And particularly as an English teacher at the high school level, where racism is a common topic of the classic literature that you tend to read, because that's in the history of America, that's important. So that's all part of the identity. I think that the whole LGBTQ side of it has come to the fore because it is out there, and I don't feel pressure to push it as much as I feel the need to just accept. And
well, as a teacher, are you getting harassed or harangued outside of the school board, that kind of a setting, by just parents? Like, you go to a grocery store, parents know you're a teacher, and they're like, hey, are you teaching that crap to my kid? Are you seeing any of that stuff? And you think that's kind of weighing?
Personally, no. But there are teachers, even in my school, that have had parents object to lessons. Mostly, it has to do with racial identity. But they have objected to lessons saying that, that you're kind of pushing your own personal narrative, and I don't want you pushing that on my kid. So that has come to the fore at my school. They're isolated instances. I teach at a school. I'm fortunate that's the exception to the rule. But it's happening. Yes, it does happen. But personally, I mean, in my career, I mean, I can go back 20 years, and I remember I had to give a student an alternate text to read because the text we were reading in class, Lord of the Flies, was too violent. And most schools will accommodate parents if they have and we do. If in this particular case you don't want your child reading this, we will provide an alternate text. And unfortunately, it's not going to be along with the class for that particular unit, but they'll be doing the same type of reading, same type of writing that they would be otherwise. I haven't felt a lot of pressure, although it feels like in Connecticut anyway, it's coming or it's increasing in the last several years.
So I remember earlier this year, I think it was right around the beginning of the school year in Southington, there was some outrage because a teacher referred to white privilege, and somehow that got confused with critical race theory, which, again, for the record, critical race theory is a law school class. It's not a curriculum being taught to children. The idea of the term white privilege or discussing race is not critical race theory. So again, and this is my whole argument, is I understand, like, parents have as much of a right to be involved in their kids' education, Barth, right? And they always have. And I highly encourage that, but it's when they don't even know what they're talking about, or they confuse one thing for another. I would assume that's got to be very frustrating for a teacher.
I think what ends up happening is it has a chilling effect. You something that I've taught. I'll use a text as an example: "Raisin in the Sun," which is a play that was written in the 50s by Lorraine Hansberry, whose father was a lawyer and actually took a case all the way to the Supreme Court, where they were talking about covenants in the city of Chicago and redlining, and how African-American families were denied buying homes in certain neighborhoods, and they ended up winning that case. This was a play that focused on a family, much like Lorraine Hansberry. It was kind of autobiographical. Teaching it for years. It's been in the curriculum since I've been in class. But in the last several years, not myself, but there has been another teacher that I know who's had a parent object to a video that was associated with it, saying it had nothing to do with it was all about redlining and the racist real estate policies that have happened in Connecticut as well as across the country. And the parent argued that this was not part of the curriculum, even though that very video mentioned Raisin in the Sun and talked about how that was related. It's so that's it has a chilling effect, is my point. So that it's kind of like every time that I hand out an article that is related to something we're reading in class, or when I have a short video or a TED talk that's related to something, I have to think, okay, is this going to upset anybody? Is there anything in here that it's something that I wouldn't have thought twice about 10 years ago?
Such a shame.
Now I do. So I think that in Connecticut, other states have laws, right? Florida, some of the states in the South, they have anything that's going to cause a student duress or whatever, however you define that, I don't know.
Pretty vague.
But it's vague, and to say nothing of the fact that, you don't really learn unless you challenge people, as long as it's at a developmentally appropriate level, but the point being is that we haven't had that level of, legislation against literature here, but there is the chilling effect. There is that, okay, I've got to think twice about, is this going to upset anybody? And so as a teacher, especially I'm a teacher of journalism, as a teacher of literature, where I believe in freedom of press and freedom of speech. It's kind of sad. I mean, it's very sad, to be honest with you. So that's probably the most relative effect to me.
Every time I talk to Barth, I always suggest, because he teaches media literacy, and I believe that should be required of every adult in the United States is media literacy and understanding sources and just understanding how to read things and what these things mean.
Maybe we should make it a requirement to vote.
Well, then again, it wouldn't be a democracy, right? I mean, if you're right, you can't legislate or mandate voting. I mean, that should be a choice too. But nonetheless, I hear you. I think to Joe's point, if people understood the importance of information and credible information, and they might actually have more incentive to find that information and therefore to vote ultimately in an informed manner. But yes, I've written extensively about media literacy. I've come out and said it should be a graduation requirement, and I agree with Joe too that I wish that we could do this for adults. Although I also realize that a lot of adults it's water over the dam. There's a lot, especially when you get up to people like my age and older, that they're set in their ways. They're just going to confirm their own biases and seek the sources that do that.
If I could sign my mom up for your media literacy class, believe me, she would do locked and loaded. Again, check this guy out on Twitter, Barth Keck, Connecticut News Junkie op-ed writer. Every couple of weeks, his articles show up there. But he's definitely a great follow on Twitter at KeckB33. Barth, always appreciate your time. As I mentioned here earlier today, I'm back on the radio next couple of weeks. You could bet your bell's going to be ringing. Definitely going to need you to come out there and help me talk to some conservatives down in Fairfield County.
Okay. I look forward to it, Joe. And Jimmy, it's been a pleasure. I
always fun talking to you. I can't wait to do it again. Well, I love reading. I really do enjoy reading your articles. I read them Joe told me you were coming on tonight. I'm like, all right, send me some stuff. So I was like, oh my God, look at this guy. This guy's freaking great.
Well, this is the kind of dialogue we need. I mean, this is the kind of dialogue that doesn't happen enough. I mean, let's be sensible. Let's be honest. Let's agree to disagree. Let's talk.
This is why Joe and I, started our own show together, just to show that. And, I love talking to people that are not like-minded, not a lot of people think like me at all. I'll tell you that.
There's not
but
many.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking and learning from you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. We'll talk soon. Barth Keck, everybody, from Connecticut News Junkie. All right. Before we wrap things up, again, the Foster Foundation and Claus Larson Roofing are teaming up to help the Covenant Soup Kitchen with an emergency funding concert. It's Sunday at 3:00. David Foster and the Shabu All-Stars are going to be performing a live show at the Claus Larson Presentation Theater in North Windham. The Covenant Soup Kitchen donations and funds are significantly lower than last year. A lot more people are in need of help this year. Please visit eventbrite.com for this concert. Tickets are just $20. It is going to be a phenomenal show. The Foster Foundation and Claus Larson Roofing, again, teaming up to help Covenant Soup Kitchen with an emergency funding concert coming up on Sunday. Eventbrite.com, and you could search Shabu All-Stars. I hope people will come out and support this amazing cause. You can also visit covenantsoupkitchen.org if you'd like to make a donation.
They have served over 2 million meals, honoring every person that has come and needed one. All right. They've had a track record of over 2 million meals. We really, really want to keep that record going, guys.
We absolutely do. All right. Again, big thank you to Barth Keck for coming on tonight's show. You can get all of the latest headlines concerning Connecticut by visiting ctpolitics.tv/headline-news. Make sure you follow us at CT Politics TV on social media. That's going to do it for us. For Jimmy J, I'm Joe Aguirre. We're back tomorrow night at 5:00 for Connecticut Politics Live. Good night.